Saya rasa terima kasih pertanyaannya. Menurut saya memang ini merupakan semacam bisnis cycle, tapi bisnis cycle yang perubahan yang mungkin amat cepat. Jadi kalau lihat tahun 2020 pada saat kita masuk COVID, yang terjadi kan suku bunga menurun, interest rate low, pemerintah membantu, dan yang terjadi yang the main beneficiary adalah perusahaan-perusahaan teknologi. Kenapa? Karena banyak sekali shifting dari offline ke online. Seperti contoh kita sekarang melakukan komunikasi atau interview ini secara online. Dan yang terjadi orang belanja secara online, orang membeli barang secara online. Dan yang terjadi banyak sekali perusahaan teknologi berkembang much faster than expected 2020-2021. Kemudian terjadi perang, dan pada saat perang terjadi di awal 2022, dan terjadinya kenaikan suku bunga untuk penanganan inflasi, dan inflasi juga naik. Nah, kenaikan suku bunga ini juga mengubah cost of capital yang terjadi di market. Nah, yang terjadi adalah valuasi dari perusahaan-perusahaan, apalagi yang high growth seperti teknologi, berubah. Mood investor pun berubah. Yang terjadi ya valuasi perusahaan menurun, ekspektasi ke depan juga berbeda, dan yang terjadi inilah sebagai dari business cycle, keinginan dari investor sekarang adalah mencari perusahaan-perusahaan yang bisa menjadi profitable. Nah, kan itu jadi sangat penting. Nah, yang sekarang terjadi, apalagi selama 1 bulan 2 bulan terakhir, memang banyak sekali terjadi right sizing di perusahaan-perusahaan yang mungkin pada tahun 2021 ada ekspansi yang besar karena mengekspektasi 2022-2023 market akan menjadi lebih baik. Sesuatu yang lumrah terjadi, tapi ya ini yang mengakibatkan sekarang tiba-tiba ada perubahan mood dan perubahan dari ekspektasi investor. Ya inilah yang membuat keadaan sekarang.
Baik, Pak Pandu, kalau kita perhatikan di beberapa tahun lalu begitu ya, bahkan di tahun kemarin banyak sekali perusahaan-perusahaan startup yang memang melakukan bakar-bakar uang begitu sebagai salah satu upaya untuk berpromosi. Nah, apakah di tahun ini dan juga mungkin di tahun depan ini bakar uang sudah tidak akan menjadi tren lagi, Pak Pandu?
Bahasanya mungkin bukan bakar uang ya, itu bakar uang emang bagus lah bahasanya. Is to win market share. They spend, they invest to win market share. And sometimes at all costs. Why? Because valuation jadi tinggi, untuk bisa memenuhi expectation of valuation yang tinggi, mereka harus menang market share yang cepat dan tinggi. Nah, sekarang perubahan mood is actually not to have market share at all costs, but to have organic growth. Obviously, organic growth still higher than expectation, jadi higher than GDP, tapi still organic growth. And I think investors sekarang is not willing to pay for growth at all costs, but they're simply willing untuk membeli perusahaan that has sustainable and growth in their cash flow. So sekarang kalau misalnya pembicaraan di perusahaan-perusahaan teknologi private, the question is no longer when are you, how long will this burn last? The question adalah when will you be profitable, right? And how will you use this advantage untuk membangun namanya moat, the moat of the company. Jadi sekarang kan is actually how do you build sustainable moat. Bahasanya moat apa ya bahasa Inggris? Moat is an English word. Sustainable defensive business model lah, mungkin gitulah. Ya kan? Jadi itu yang memang ekspektasi investor sekarang.
Oke, saya akan ke Mr. Anas. Mr. Anas, there have been massive layoffs also happens in India this year. Since last June, thousands workers on tech industry, including India's unicorn, have been laid off. So how could it happen?
No, I think from whatever I've understood from Mr. Pandu, I think it's what happened during India is a big country, right? So a lot of people, and a lot of these trade and market transaction happened offline. But during pandemic, there was a sudden shift in the whole buying criteria, in the sense that the buying process, the huge surge of demand happened in terms of people coming into online, right? So because of which a lot of massive hiring that was done by tech sector and the tech companies in India during the pandemic. And somewhere down the line, I think one of the underlying assumptions that I think that could have been an oversight during pandemic was that some of these investors and companies thought this growth and this change in character or would possibly stay on forever. But as you can see, once the pandemic kind of got over, people are more than aggressively getting out in the public, open, making transactions, all that. So if you look at the whole thing, there was a definitive mismatch in terms of what happened during pandemic and what the reality now is. So there was, of course, excessive hiring during pandemic, and which could possibly result in some bit of layoffs now. And secondly, it is also like Mr. Pandu said, right? It's investment till possibly 2021, when the valuation was at all-time high. At least from an Indian perspective, it's about going after growth at all cost. Now you need to have growth, and profit is like a pursuit of happiness. You will not really get profit, but you have a pursuit for profit. But then growth at all costs has always been the whole thing, and all the money, cash burn, all that stuff was for growth. And you have to hire people, and of course, how do you grow? You have to build tech system, sales, marketing. The whole ecosystem was built around growth. But what happened after 2021? Some of the IPOs that happened in India. Some of the most famous companies like Paytm, Zomato, some of these IPOs happened, big ticket IPOs happened in India, and the results were not all that great, which kind of brought in the realization that expectation from a retail investor perspective versus a private investor there's been a significant gap. All of the IPOs could not perform at 50% below the IPO price at this current level. So that expectation mismatch is also there, which is leading to a big question on profitability. Nowadays, I'm an active investor in startup as well. We have a small fund as well. Till last year, the whole question was mainly on what was the growth potential and everything. But now we've started asking what the profit margins are, what are the net margin of a businesses. So these are the multiple factors that I think it is. Basically, one is, of course, to realign on what the pandemic expectation versus the post-pandemic expectation is. And secondly, to understand that it's not only about growth, but also to maintain sustainable profits. And for a tech startup, possibly the biggest expense is basically the people, right? You cannot fire computers and servers. You can just ask people to be laid off, and that's how we save expense. So I think the obvious target is the startup, the alignment of the workforce. So these are some of the reasons that I think the reasons for layoffs are.
Okay, Mr. Anas, next question. Is this massive layoffs phenomenon happens because of mismanagement, or maybe more because of startup ecosystem that already fed up right now?
I don't think it's mismanagement, of course. I think that's my perspective. I think it's we possibly have let's say we put out the unicorn list in India. Now you have about the top 100 unicorns in India, and that's about, let's say, 200 to 300 founders. And so if you look at the percentage of these founders versus the rest of the population of the country, we probably see these are one of the smartest people in the country, and the boards of these founders of these companies have some of the best investors and leaders on the boards, right? But there are, of course, assumptions and business decisions that are being made based on the status quo at that point in time, and it could definitely evolve, right? So I don't really think it's mismanagement. Of course, we had big hits like COVID happened between a 2021 valuation aberration when there was excess liquidity in the market. Now all of a sudden the liquidity is dried up because of inflation and high cost of capital. So all that has an impact on the overall the funding cycle and what the valuations are. So when there is a liquidity dry up in the market, what do founders look for? How can we raise funds by improving possibly profitability? So I don't really think it's mismanagement. It's about recalibrating the valuation assumptions and future expectations in terms of what you would look from a startup. I think that's what it is.